Compare Israel on October 6, 2023 to the Israel of today and where we are in the situation. Yes, Gaza was a horrible 2 years, but look at where we are now with Hamas today compared to October 6th. Look at the defanging of Hezbollah. Look at what we've done in Iran in the 12-day war. We show the whole world who controls the skies over Tehran.
Being a Jew and someone working with Israeli companies, living in New York City, what's the vibes of it? And what's the vibes in the tech ecosystem?
There's the bomb shelter. Like, where do you go? You have to drive for a few hours? It's like, no, there's a bomb shelter in, most public places and new residences, offices. Everywhere you go, you have to be within a bomb shelter. And like, why? Are there like thousands of bomb shelters in Israel? I was like, yeah. And there's a reason for it. And he's like, wait a minute, people just live like this? And this was at a time when this was happening multiple times a day.
Welcome to another episode of IsraelTech. I'm excited to have here Yevgeny Gelfand. Yevgeny Gelfand is currently in New York and is a VC investor focused on Israel. And he is a partner at Alumni Ventures. But before we begin, make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe and share this with your friends so we can continue to democratize the Israeli tech ecosystem. And of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to give us 5 stars. Yev, tech you for joining us on IsraelTech. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. I get to talk about my 2 favorite things, Israel and startup investing.
Lovely. So let's start with something that you don't want to talk about, only because it's timely. So you have a new mayor, Dani. Or mayor-elect. Congratulations. Being a Jew and someone working with Israeli companies, living in New York City, what's the vibes over there? And what's the vibes in the tech ecosystem?
Look, definitely not my preference, not the preference of a lot of people, but it's the reality. I think the best thing I can say on that is not from my mouth, but a political pundit I deeply respect who's been around a long time and served as an advisor to many senior politicians here in the States, many people you would have known about. And when he won the primary, I was kind of crestfallen. I reached out to him. I was like, what's going on? And he said, look, I've always remembered to keep a perspective. Politics is about juxtaposing the short term with the longer term. And the short term is going to suck. There's no sugarcoating it. For New York Jews, for pro-Israel people like me, it's going to be 4 years of discomfort. But, and this is an important but, ultimately this might actually be a net good in a perverse way. Because all the promises this guy has made are mathematically impossible. Whatever your ideology, left-leaning, right-leaning, Democrat, Republican, whatever you are, he's made so many promises: free busing, subsidized housing, give away this, that, cancel the student debt. It's just fiscally impossible to deliver. And so a lot of people will be disenchanted with him. Again, it's going to be 4 years of a bad price to pay. We might see an exodus, especially wealthier people, that will further deplete the tax base in New York.
So you make an Aliyah? Is this an exclusive?
Well, I do hope to at some point. We can get to that later, but not immediately, not as a reaction to Mamdani. I'm not going anywhere just because of this guy.
Right.
But, people will tend to get really disappointed once the trash starts piling up on the streets, which for those of you that have been to New York,
Yes, that's
I don't know why we do that, but we have trash in the street. And so once civil services start malfunctioning and he doesn't deliver on his promises, people are going to be really upset. So I'm actually, at the end of this, expecting a pretty severe backlash the other way. And I think he's going to do ultimately more harm than good, unfortunately, to the city I love and to our local Jewish community. But I think that will be contained to the near term. And ultimately, I think we'll be better off for it, but we'll have a price to pay in the short term.
Before we continue, let me tell you about our partner, Deal. As you know, I'm an entrepreneur. One of the hardest parts of being an entrepreneur is hiring the talent that you need, onboarding them, getting them the equipment that they need, and getting them paid. It's annoying. Compliance is difficult, and there's a lot of different laws in different markets. And most HR platforms, they're difficult to use. Deal is different. It's perfect for founders and startups like me, and grows with you as you scale. Imagine HR, IT, and payroll, all in one place, easy to use, and AI native. They take care of compliance, so you can focus on your business. And you'll like using it. Go ahead and see for yourself. Visit our partner at deal.com/IsraelTech. That's DEEL.com/IsraelTech. And now, back to the show.
I hear you economically, but I just think maybe in the long term, he can import a lot more jihadis, do a lot more things to promote anti-Semitism, stop Jewish organizations from growing and flourishing and the community from flourishing, and people to leave, and it'll hurt the community. That will have permanent effects. Similar like Joe Biden opening up the border to third worlders that hate Americans and hate Jews, and over 8 million that they know of came during his 4 years, that's not something you can just reverse. It's not like we had bad economics for 4 years and now we're going to rebound. That's kind of my fear. Okay, so speaking of economy, let's talk about economy. I mean, so you sit in New York, right? I'm sitting in Israel, and you invest in American and Israeli companies.
Yep.
When it comes to the economy, what do you think American and tech investors such as yourself are looking at when investing in Israel?
There are kind of two broad
Economically
categories on that. I represent both, but there's some that are more ideologically motivated. People who are pro-Israel and want to support Israel's economy, the startup and tech scene, because they see its importance. Its importance to contribution to GDP, to exports, to employment, to the tax base in Israel. So there are a lot of people that do it for those reasons, and it's their way of voting quietly, because people aren't always as vocal in their pro-Israel beliefs, because it's unpopular in many circles, but they can vote with their wallets. And many people are doing just that. And there's a separate category of people that don't know Israel, don't particularly care about Israel, couldn't put it on a map, but they're out looking for financial returns, which is understandable. And for those people, they look at the vast opportunities set before them today. They see public equity valuations stretched in the US and most of the developed world. I'm not calling a bubble. I don't think anybody can precisely call a bubble, but if you look at traditional metrics like price to earnings, price to book, whatever ratios you want to use, you can argue a case that we're kind of closer to the end of the cycle than the beginning, so people are worried. And if you're more of a fixed income or balanced investor in bonds and debt instruments, the best expectation is for interest rates to reduce over time, reducing yields, so you won't get as much on the yield side either. So people are like, listen, I got to invest. Like, I don't want to sit out for 10 years. Where do I put my money? For those kinds of people, Israel is really resonating as an investment destination. And there are many reasons for it. And I know this because I'm on the front lines. I've been trying to convince anyone who would listen to join me in investing in Israel, because I genuinely believe, not only for my ideological reasons, I'm hugely pro-Israel, ardent Zionist, heart on my sleeve, kippah on my head, love Israel, and I'm in your face about it. But if you even strip all that away, objectively speaking, I think it's one of the best destinations for a financial investor in today's markets, and people are seeing that.
Well, when your last name is Israel, then we'll trust you that you're actually pro-Israel. Until then, I guess the jury's still out. So what do you tell people, investors that are just looking for a return? What do you tell them that why Israel would be a great financial investment?
I tell them two things. One is, anyone who's been around investing a long time, and I've been doing it for 20 years, it's not the longest time, but most of my career, including 15 years at BlackRock across financial markets, my entire career has been in investing. And if you are in investment as an industry long enough, you look for pattern recognition. That's what the best investors do. That's certainly true in venture capital, by the way. Everyone will say it's a pattern recognition business. You just need enough reps. If you look at Israel's history, and it's a limited history in that it's only 77 years, but it's also a very rich data set. Unfortunately, tragically, a very rich data set of conflict and skirmishes and tensions and geopolitical cataclysms. Looking at the history, it's very clear, objectively speaking, that Israel has had to endure a lot, disproportionately so. But every time, without exception, Israel comes out stronger, and the economy specifically comes out stronger. And what follows is a kind of multi-year period of strong investment performance across markets. But specifically, if you want to use a simple proxy, let's look at like the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and how it's performed since October 7th. If you're more of a fixed income investor, look at what credit spreads have done and yields. If you're an FX investor, look at the shekel. It's actually appreciated and strengthened. Whatever metric you look at, Israel is unequivocally stronger economically. Yes, we've had to take on more debt to pay for the war, and debt to GDP has gone up, but still considerably lower than the rest of the developed world. I think we're actually still the lowest debt to GDP in the rest of the world. So Israel still has these strong tailwinds, economically speaking, behind it. And just looking at history, this is another case of, yes, horrible situation, horrible 2 years, but coming out stronger. And what should follow, if history is any indication, is a multi-year period of continued growth, a golden period, so to speak. That's the first thing I say. The second thing is even more important. The second thing is, if you look at the best investors in the world, whoever your favorite is, take Warren Buffett, Howard Marks, whoever you look at, they'll always look for these very rare and fleeting moments in history of market dislocation. It's kind of a euphemism, but basically what it means is like when markets are not making sense. They always tune in when something isn't adding up and not making sense. And that's where they make a ton of money. You can go back all the way to like the tulip bubble of Holland. You can go back to
Well, you're old, Yev.
the Great Recession. You can choose any bubble or financial panic you want, but those are enormous opportunities to lose money immediately and enormous opportunities to make money if you exploit it correctly. What's the opportunity here? The dislocation here, what's not making sense is that Israel as an investment destination is still treated by many as a destination that's too risky, too scary, and kind of too many investors are still laying off, wait and see. And I understand why, right? Because on the surface, we know why. War is scary for investors. Terrorism is scary for investors. Campus protests and anti-Israel sentiment, everyone hating on Israel. That's a scary thing for you to turn around and say, that's where I'm going to park my money. No, thank you. The irony, and this is the opportunity, is that if you look objectively, so strip away my yarmulke and my Israel love and strip away the hate and just look in the middle of the course, Israel objectively has had an enormous de-risking journey over the last 2 years. Compare Israel on October 6, 2023 to the Israel of today and where we are in the situation. Yes, Gaza was a horrible 2 years, but look at where we are now with Hamas today compared to October 6th. Look at the defanging of Hezbollah. Look at what we've done in Iran in the 12-day war. We show the whole world who controls the skies over Tehran. Look at the fall of Assad in Syria. And most importantly to me, what I think is the future, the potential expansion of the Abraham Accords. I think we're on the precipice of something really big there. So check. You go down the list. And I haven't talked about a few more things that are more kind of stealthily in the works. I'm talking about Judea and Samaria specifically. There's some really big developments there that have not been announced, but look for those in the coming months. It's been enormously de-risking for Israel. So if you were an objective investor, you would say, oh, wow, I want to invest in Israel and valuations should be through the roof now, right? Because it's de-risked so much. No, valuations are still depressed, at least compared to, on a relative basis, compared to other markets and compared to history. So that's the dislocation. And when I talk to investors that way, the light bulb immediately goes off. They're like, I should be backing up the truck and just putting everything in Israel right now. Don't put everything in Israel, but it should absolutely be a part of every investment portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Ackman understood this, right? He invested 5% in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, doubled his money in 8 months.
Exactly.
Something like that. So it's like that crazy.
Look at what the smart money is doing. Stop talking. Right. Listen to me. I'm just the talking head. Look at what the smart money in the world is doing. You'll see a similar trend there.
Right. I would say the one way that when it comes to risk or things, Israel, since let's say if you go to October 6th, is the Eilat port, the port in the Red Sea, is still not operating because of the Houthi terrorists that are controlled by Yemen. I imagine it's just due course. I imagine it will be taken care of in the next year or so. But that is one thing that is, let's say, worse, is still risky. Do you think this is in general for all of the Israeli economy, or do you think maybe this is uniquely tech? Like Bill Ackman invested in the stock exchange, which is all the companies, the entire economy, he believes, right? It includes local banks and supermarkets and tech companies are on there too, of course. Or do you think this is unique opportunity for tech?
No, it's broad. It's the former, so it includes the broader economy. There's a unique reason for it, though. There are many things that make Israel special. This is one other thing that makes Israel special economically, and specifically insulates the Israeli economy from economic shocks. And that's the fact that because Israel is such a tiny country and such a tiny microeconomy, most entrepreneurs at startups and CEOs of big businesses alike, they build with an international scope, right? Every Israeli entrepreneur that you see walking around Sarona is like talking about how to sell to the US, Western Europe, become globally. And because Israel has such a global perspective and derives so much of revenue figures from international markets, that insulates Israel. So again, the smartest investors figured this out. Bill Ackman is a great example. I have great respect for him. He saw this right away. He's like, listen, there's this panic selling on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange post October 7th. But look at where the revenues for these companies are coming from. They're coming from international markets, Europe and the US specifically. And so Europe and the US isn't affected by local acts of terrorism or even local wars that are contained around Israel. We care deeply about this. You, me, and everyone listening to this podcast, we care a lot about it. Most of the world doesn't. And so that, ironically, has actually helped to insulate Israel's companies, big and small, and Israel's economy as a whole. And that's a large part why we've seen that enormous snapback and the enormous rally in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. It outpaced even the red hot Nasdaq in the U.S., which already is near record territory. Tel Aviv did even better.
I think they're twice as good. How does BDS play the movement to boycott, divest, and sanction Jewish people in the Jewish state? How does that play a role?
I have a lot of thoughts on that topic. It's I can't dismiss it and say no role, especially if it starts to become a bit more mainstream and accepted. So historically, it was more on the margins, and it wasn't really much of a threat. I still don't consider it a serious threat, but I do keep an eye on it, specifically when it becomes institutionalized. I'll give you a specific example. One of my dear clients during my BlackRock days, and I was responsible for the biggest institutional relationships of the firm. So the biggest investors globally were my clients, including Norges Bank in Norway, one of the largest investors in the world, multi-trillion with a T portfolio. And they recently started, not a full-scale BDS, but they started to reevaluate their Israel investment policies, including divestment from Israel. Now, you could say, well, it's just a single investor, but they're a very prominent investor, and they're a leading indicator of sorts in that many other institutional investors follow the lead of prominent investors like that. So that was unfortunate, and for me, deeply personally disappointing, because again, this was a client of mine. I knew them. So I was very saddened and disappointed by that.
Did you reach out to them?
No, I haven't.
How come?
I don't know what to say at this point. I'm not employed at BlackRock. I'm not a service provider. And
I mean, connecting with them, you could send them a LinkedIn message and do your part. No pressure, but I'm pressuring you.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You ask a good question. It's a fair question. That's the second part of my response is like, well, what should Israel do about it, right? What should all of us do about it? What should I do about it? And so I think the answer is what we've been doing for 77 years and thousands of years before that. And that is continuing to build, to create, to add value. That's what we do best, even in the face of great adversity. We talk about pattern recognition. No one has a better track record of overcoming adversity than us. That's so we're going to face a few additional headwinds through this BDS. The ultimate antidote is to build and win, because I've been in those boardrooms with the CIO, the chief investment officer, the CEO, the board, the trustees, the board of governors, all the decision-making bodies. And they all love the free PR and the virtue signaling from things like ESG investing, environmental social governance, SRI investing, socially responsible investing, green investing, impact investing. Choose the euphemism and whatever wrapper you want to call it. And so BDS right now is popular. It sounds good. And it's a popular opinion to be on the record, like, look at us, we're standing up to Israel, we're anti-Israel, we're on the side of morality, on the right side of history. But behind closed doors, because I've been in those rooms, they're like, but don't let it cost us returns. Do whatever you need to virtue signal. Don't compromise returns. Don't let it cost me even a basis point of return. We're still financial investors, and we still need to invest the wealth of the Norwegian people. We need to invest in our pension fund to make sure people have money when they retire. For endowments, for all these institutional investors, they're still financial investors at heart. And if Israel continues to flourish, as I fully expect it will, as it has the last 2 years economically, as my thesis, the golden period of Israel is still to come, especially if the expansion of the Abraham Accords comes to pass. My expectation is that over the next 10 years, Israel will be proven as one of the best, if not the best, financial investment, purely financially speaking, in the world. And I've gone on the record. I'm very vocal about this. It's not a popular opinion. People say, you gotta kind of calm your language a little bit. But I want those CIOs, the chief investment officers, and those boards at those institutional investors promulgating the BDS mantra. I want them to be fired. I want it to happen prominently and spectacularly, not because of like my strong pro-Israel voice or their anti-Israel voice, but because people will see, you just missed out on the investment opportunity of a generation. What were you doing? For 10 years, Israel's been building, and it has unequivocally been proven to be the best investment destination. And you, Mr. CIO or Mrs. CIO, you missed it. And I fully expect that to happen. It will take time, but that's what I ultimately think will come to pass.
Before we continue, let me tell you about our partners, The Recruitery. The Recruitery places go-to-market talent for early and growth stage cybersecurity companies. The Recruitery specializes in recruiting and retaining top talent in global markets. If you're looking for a recruitment company to help your cybersecurity company close cultural gaps and find great talent on the ground that can help you scale, we recommend you also partnering with our partner, The Recruitery. And now, back to the show.
I think the best way to do that is Israel should go offensively, take out ads in Norway, and show what the returns have been if they beat BDS and if they didn't, and mock them to their faces. I think that's the only way. I think enough defense hasn't really done anything. On the topic of BDS, what do you think about Israeli founders as they go abroad usage? Of course, this was a very small market. Should they wear the fact that they're Israeli on their sleeve?
Not for me to say. It's a hugely personal decision. I've had that conversation with so many of the Israeli founders we back, because on the one hand, they're proud of their Israeli roots and they want to be proud about it and not hide it. But on the other hand, they're worried, especially in a tough fundraising environment that is even tougher for Israelis. They're like, I still need to fund my startup. I need to make payroll. So I totally get that. No judgment at all on my part. And I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I will just add context to the question. And that is, don't assume that being proudly Jewish, proudly and vocally Israeli, as I am, don't assume it's necessarily a handicap. And people ask me, I walk the walk. People ask, yeah, well, you've been so vocal and so unapologetically pro-Israel since October 7th, hasn't it cost you professionally? And that says, of course. I know for a fact I've lost LPs in my funds. I've lost deals on founders I could have backed that didn't want me as an investor because of my yarmulke, because of my pro-Israel views, and same with my LPs. And you know what? I say good riddance. I don't want you anyway. And I don't say that in a bitter way. I say that in a way like, I don't want to make money for you if that's your moral stance. And as a founder, I don't want to back you and toil and break my back, turning you into a unicorn just for you to have a successful exit, if that's your view. So in a weird way, we're actually perfectly aligned, even though we have diametrically opposite worldviews. You don't want me as your backer or as a steward of your capital, and I don't want you as my investor startup. It's a perfect accord. So for startup founders, I say, look, there are still people out there who, again, they're generally quiet. They're the quiet majority. I wish they were more vocal, but they're not. But that quietly support Israel. Best proven through an example, real anecdote. I was in a pitch meeting with a bunch of kind of true blue blood Americans. Don't really know Israel, couldn't place it on a map, but they like startup investing. And so they're in a meeting with Israeli entrepreneurs from Israel over Zoom. In the middle of the pitch, just like 10 minutes in, maybe 15 minutes in, the sirens go off in Israel, and the founders politely excuse themselves, sorry, we have to go to the mamad. And they walk out, leaving an empty room. And the American investors look at me like pale-faced, like, what the hell's going on? They just interrupted a pitch meeting. And I explained, well, they have to go to the mamad. Well, what is that? Oh, it's the bomb shelter. It's like, why? Why do they have to go to a bomb shelter? Well, the siren went off, because there's just coming in. And they're like, missiles? What are you talking about? From where? I was like, well, it can be any of 7 different directions. We don't really know. But they're like, wait, so there's the bomb shelter. Like, where do you go? You have to drive for a few hours? And it's like, no, there's a bomb shelter in, most public places and near residences, offices. Everywhere you go, you have to be within a bomb shelter. And like, why? Are there like thousands of bomb shelters in Israel? I was like, yeah. And there's a reason for it. And he's like, wait a minute, people just live like this? And this was at a time when this was happening multiple times a day. So they're like, multiple times a day, people have to drop everything they're doing and run to the mamad. And I'm like, yeah, and actually it's millions of people that live like this. And the Americans were like, you know what? We don't even need to continue the pitch. We're all in. People like that, we always tout grit and resilience. That's what we look for in founders. They're like,
so many people tout it, but they really don't.
Yeah, they're like, you know what?
They want confirmation bias and connections and friends more than they actually want.
Yeah.
Where they actually make an impact.
So there are some people that will actually, it's the opposite of a handicap. They'll actually give you kind of extra credit for it. The hard part is you have to know your audience. So that the audience was perfect for that. There are a lot of people that are secretly pro-Israel, and they'll support when they understand and they hear the story. They love you for it. If you're, talking to the chair of the Middle East Department at Columbia University, probably not your audience. So you got to know your audience.
No, it's amazing. Columbia University. I find if you're in cyber, you should definitely say, because Israel, let's say, has such a strong reputation for cyber, say, oh, you're cyber, oh, an Israeli. Same with defense and other kind of things. I find it to be very valuable. You're in New York. Tell me about what's it like to partner with VCs, Israeli VCs, since you're an American one, even though you invest in Israeli one, VCs. And also maybe what it's like when you're leading investment rounds or promoting ones that have to do with Israeli startups with other American VCs that have no connection to Israel. Can you talk about those VC partnerships?
Yeah, well, we partner a lot with other VCs because we have to. Our model is a bit unique in that we are exclusively co-investors. We never lead rounds. We only co-invest once there is a lead in place and a term sheet in place. Then we come in to help fill the rest of the round. So
Why will you only do it that way?
we do it because our mission is to be the co-investor of choice, and it's because our investors, our LPs, are all retail individuals. They're people who generally are shut out from venture markets. And our mission statement is to democratize access to venture as an asset class, because venture has historically been one of the top performing asset classes and historically notoriously inaccessible to the retail investor. So you can't get access as an individual to the Sequoia deal or Excel or Bessemer or Andreessen Horowitz. Even my institutional clients at BlackRock couldn't always get access to those funds. So you're shut out from the best deal flow. And what you're left with is kind of the dregs, and the dregs don't perform well. So people have a really bad experience investing as angels, generally speaking. There are exceptions. We wanted to change that. So our model is, all right, if we can't access the Sequoia fund, we'll co-invest alongside them on the same terms and the same valuation. We'll get access to all the best startups and companies that are the best VCs in the world are backing, and we'll do it as a co-investor. And why do we do exclusively co-invest? Because right now we are super friendly with every major VC in the world, including in Israel. They view us as friends. Once they back around, they welcome us into the round. We can't do that if we also sometimes lead, because then we're also a threat. We're a competitor.
You're also a competitor. Got it. Yeah.
And we don't want to do that. It'll cannibalize our main business. And also for startup founders, it's like, yeah, sometimes you lead and sometimes you don't. Right now, you're not leading my round. That tells me it's a negative signal. You don't like my round. You don't like my company. But if we never lead, we've never once led, and we don't plan to, then it's like it's much easier to hold that line when it's categorically true. So that's why we do it. To answer your first question,
yeah, go ahead.
So we co-invest. People consider this a little snobby. It's not a snobby thing, but it's just empirically, if you look at the history of modern venture capital, let's say the last 50 years, since like 1972 onward, most of the returns in venture have been disproportionately hogged by the top, call it top quartile, but it's really top decile VCs. It's all the names that you would know. And there's been a persistence of returns over time where since 1972 onward, almost all the major names are still the same names that top the league tables. Sometimes there are new entrants like Andreessen, sometimes others drop out, but generally that's been true. And so for us, when we look at co-investing, it has to be along some of those really strong names that have a long track record, successful exits, brand name appeal. And it's been true in Israel as well. So we've been fortunate to partner with the big global firms, like I mentioned, Sequoia, Excel, Index, Lightspeed, Bessemer, Andreessen Horowitz, a lot of those firms doing business in Israel. And by the way, that's the smart money. All of those firms are becoming more and more active in Israel, deploying more, raising funds in Israel, relocating partners in some cases, like Sean McGuire at Sequoia, moving to Israel. That's what the smart money is doing, and that's really notable. The other part of it is we look at what the local players in Israel are doing. So who are considered kind of the best established firms that have long track records and exits to point to. So we co-invest with them as well. And those names, again, very obvious names: the Pitangos, Violas, TLV Partners, Glilot, the Team 8, those kinds of names. Those are the ones we like to co-invest. If they're a sector specialist, like in cyber, great. If they're generalists, that's fine too. We co-invest with everybody. And for us, we find that's a great model as well. So what we see happening is those investors continue to double down and triple down in Israel, and they have the best vantage point being local investors. So I look at someone. Let's take a real example, right? Let's take someone like Shahar Tzafrir at TLV Ventures, one of the best known and best investors. Period. Someone I personally highly respect. He came out on record right the morning after the 12-day war with Iran started. The very next day, he said, I wired an investment into a startup that morning. He knew the war was happening because it started the previous night. He had the option to freeze and interrupt the wire and cancel it. And by the way, 99 investors out of 100 would have done just that internationally, globally. In San Francisco, they would have done it in a heartbeat. We saw some of that during the Silicon Valley bank run, if you remember that a few years ago. We saw the panic and herd mentality and the lack of loyalty that is sometimes revealed in those periods of crisis. In periods of crisis, Israel does the opposite. It rallies, it solidifies. We've seen that over the last 2 years as well. And he was like, you know what? I knew this war. I didn't know if it would last 12 days or 6 days or 100 days. I didn't know, but I knew it would resolve. I knew Israel would come out stronger. I believed in the founders and the startups. And I said, you know what? Let it roll. Send the money. And that to me just encapsulates. It's one example. There are many others. But coming from one of the most prominent, well-known, and best-regarded investors in Israel and globally, to me, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, totally. The activity partners are also great at the Tango. I had the pleasure of interviewing Chemi Perez and also Ona Sega.
Fantastic.
They're wonderful.
Oh,
They're wonderful
people. Absolutely.
So what's it like working with, by the way, just an interesting point when you talk about, Israel's counter everyone else financially, Israel was the only country not to suffer the recession in 2008, the financial recession in 2008, and there are others too that just continue to grow through it. What's the difference between partnering with the VCs in Israel versus partnering with VCs in the United States? Is there any cultural differences that you think maybe one can learn from the other, or vice versa?
Certainly cultural differences. I don't know if it's so much learning from the other. It's just a different way of operating. I think these are generally well known. I'm not going to reveal anything new to people. But
I don't mean generic culture ones, but specifically VC culture when you invest, and versus VC culture in the two countries. How do you think, do they operate differently? Is it their speed, what they're looking for? One we're maybe looking on personalities, more on scale. Is it like, do they operate a little bit differently one from the other? You could also say no. Then they're chasing the dollar.
If there were a gap historically, that gap is converging. I think historically, you could accuse Israel, Israeli VCs specifically, and startup founders historically, if you could make an accusation, it would be that they were not dreaming big enough.
The Israeli VCs.
Yes, that they would settle in many cases for lower exits and sometimes not give the startups enough runway, both financially and philosophically, enough room to continue to grow, to become a really large player. Facebook, now Meta, famously had to turn down multiple acquisition offers because Zuckerberg specifically, he believed in the future of the company. He also had control rights within the company. That helps. But in many cases, it's very tempting for most founders, not just in Israel. This is true anywhere. It's human. When you get dangled let's say $10 million exit for you personally, $10 million is a lot of money to someone who was broke just a few years ago. Very tempting.
And so grinding 80 hours a week. And that's
it's like, I could continue to grind for a few years and maybe I turn that into 100 million or even $1 billion. But maybe it goes to zero. That's really hard calculation to do it. So historically, Israel would kind of bat for singles and doubles and would do it quite successfully. I think that's changing. Just look at the size of the exits we've had recently with Wiz, 32 billion, CyberArk, 27 billion, some of the companies that went public, eToro, $6 billion valuation on the NASDAQ, Via, 4 billion. The fact that we're talking billions and Bs now is such a different language. In the past, couple of $100 million exit with an M was considered a good exit in Israel. You would tout it, you would boast about it. It was good, and not taking anything away from that because it's hard work to even build a company that's worth $100 million. So do not take anything away from that. But that was kind of our ceiling, self-imposed ceiling, and we settled that. We were okay. The founders and the VCs. I think nowadays Israel has seen it's an emboldened Israel, not just because of our military successes, but because we've seen that. Hey, you know what? We are the cradle of innovation. We have this massive R&D engine. We create some of the world's best startups. And you know what? If we stick with them, give them a bit more time and capital to fuel that growth, we can play with the big boys, the biggest boys on the planet, including Silicon Valley. I have a personal thesis that Israel is the future Silicon Valley for the world. And
we'll definitely want to hear that in a minute.
We're starting to see that now with some of the exits. And so that gap is converging. I think a lot of the Israeli VCs I speak to now, and I speak to Israeli and San Francisco and New York VCs all on the same day. So I have a good juxtaposition. I think they have much more in common these days than not.
Yeah. I interviewed the head of NVIDIA Israel at the Scaled Nation conference at Rutgers University a couple months ago. And in our conversation, I was like, kind of one of the things about, how can we get things to scale up? And I really think, a lot of people will take that exit, but then they'll come back and they'll found another company. And then they're like, I made my money. I don't have to work again. My kids probably never have to work. And now they're dedicated to doing something bigger than them and scaling up and then doing something bigger. So sometimes it's time and the maturity, in a sense, that all the magic in the world can't change the human nature that people have been grinding and have no money and are broke. They have an opportunity to get an exit, never work again. Then they'll have to come back, start another one, and it'll just take several more years. It's just a cycle. That's really all it is. Why do you think Israel is going to be the new Silicon Valley? I don't know if that was your wording. I don't know if that
I
bad.
think, yeah, when I say this to people, especially in the West, they look at me like I'm nuts. Like it seems like a hyperbolic statement, right? I mean, Silicon Valley has been
I have some
the
guesses.
world for.
Can I guess? Can I guess? This is fascinating. Can I guess your answer?
Yeah.
Okay, I think Silicon Valley is becoming a little less centralized. I think a lot of the tech in the United States has gone from Silicon Valley a little bit to Texas, even New York. I don't know, Boston. So in a sense, they lost the opportunity where everyone's sitting one on top of each other. The regulations and the taxes in California in general is really just driving people away. I mean, you saw Elon Musk leave when you had the biggest entrepreneur there, and he got up and left. So you can't do business here. There's something else. Not just the ones that are leaving, but also the cost of living is high. So all the engineers and employees that they want to attract, and the crime makes them less want to be there. So they're not attracting new and young talent. It seems like the universities aren't as strong as they used to be. So people that graduate don't hang around and stay, as opposed to, let's say, Greater Massachusetts, Boston, which is doing great, in my opinion. So, I mean, one of the advantages I think Israel has is that it's basically a city-state, size-wise, and America can have its technology and its hubs decentralized. So, you could have the best VCs, but you know what? They'll spread out over different cities, and the collaboration is, and they have to get an airplane to speak to each other, even time zones away. So I think I find, the not pro-business environment of San Francisco and California and other opportunities to build tech companies throughout America is going to slowly bleed Silicon Valley. And I think Israel will continue to consolidate.
That is a phenomenal answer. I should be interviewing you on this podcast. We should reverse roles.
Well, when you have a podcast, you can invite me on.
Everything you just said is absolutely true. Those are all valid points. There are two parts to this, right? When one part is the decline that Silicon Valley has had, which you just enumerated, and the other is the ascendancy of Israel. And at some point, if those trends continue, they intersect, right? So the San Francisco area has declined for all those reasons. Now, I will caveat and say they're in the midst of a turnaround, which has legs. It's a credible turnaround. Politically, it has changed. The micropolitics in San Francisco have changed recently.
Yeah, their mayor started to turn things around to her credit.
Correct for the better. Jews will never get credit for that, by the way, but that's okay. But it is turning around for the better. And the AI renaissance has really resulted in jobs returning and office space getting released in San Francisco, especially the downtown area. So there is
also New York, ironically.
Yeah, so there's
New York real estate, commercial real estate rebounded, interestingly.
Correct. So we have to acknowledge that there is a revitalization happening, and that's great. I welcome that. I cheer for success, not for failure. So I'm glad that's happening in San Francisco. But the other macro trends you listed are still true. The really important thing is what you said about Israel. Israel being the kind of the city-state, the small nature of the country. Everyone considers being small as a disadvantage. It also has some really unique strengths, which we've seen on full display over the last 2 years. And as long as Israel can maintain some semblance of that solidarity, it's a big if, because I don't know that to be true, but I hope it to be true. Israel is unbeatable if that happens to be true. History is witness to that. There's a concentration, and historically, when there's a concentration of venture and startup activity in a very close geographic proximity, wherever it may be, Silicon Valley is the shining example, but there are others. You start to see that kind of a network effect, and it leads to this Cambrian explosion of innovation. Israel's already had a fair share of innovation, but it'll become even more because it is so concentrated. I would actually argue, maybe somewhat controversially, I think Israel would benefit from a little more diversification, actually, away from geographically away from.
Yeah, I agree.
Right now, so much is in Tel Aviv, and that's great. And even within Tel Aviv, it's like a couple of square blocks within Tel Aviv. But I think it would be great to have more of that innovation go south into the Negev region, go north.
You're getting that with Beersheba, and you're getting that with NVIDIA's and Yokneam.
So, and I think that's
healthy. Massively right outside of Gaza. So you're starting to see. That was one of the questions I actually asked to have NVIDIA, and he was saying, yeah, we're all the way from Tel Chai on the north to Eilat, and I was like, you're like the borders of Israel, right? You extend the whole borders right to.
And that's a wonderful thing. I welcome that. I think that's great for Israel, and that does not take away from Israel's ascendancy as a future.
Right, Israel's still small enough that the decentralization from Tel Aviv.
Absolutely, and it's small in terms of that solidarity and the cohesion of people. It's still so tight knit is the word I would use.
Right.
That's actually, let's weave this together with your previous question. So that's where I see the biggest difference between the Israeli VCs I interact with and the Americans across the US. So that's San Francisco, New York, Boston, Austin, Texas, wherever it is. And because we're pan-national across the US. But where I see the biggest difference, because remember, I was only appointed head of Israel for Alumni Ventures a few months ago. So I'm new in this role. And as much as I love Israel, I know I'm an outsider. I'm not Israeli. I don't live in Israel. I didn't serve in the IDF the way so many of my friends and family in Israel have. So I'm kind of a stranger in a strange land, even though I love the land and I love the people. What's different is when over the last 2 months, I've been crowding my calendar from early morning before my kids wake up to the late night after I put them to sleep to overlap time zones as much as I can with Israel. And so I've been packing my meetings with anyone who would take a meeting just to get more immersed in the Israeli tech ecosystem on both the VC investor side and the startup founder operator side. And I can't overstate how open, welcoming, helpful the Israelis I've been, like 99%. That's probably not even an exaggeration. Let's say 95% for sure. 19 out of 20 Israeli VCs, startup founders, people in the industry generally, once they hear what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how we're so mission aligned, because ultimately, what are we all doing? We all want to help Israel flourish. That's what it's all about for us. And when they see we're aligned, they're like, I don't view you as a competitor or an outsider or American or anything. How can I help? What doors can I open? Let me connect you with this person, this person. You name any name. Like I've gotten connected to people in Netanyahu's cabinet, politically, top people, top brass in the IDF, people building the top most coveted startups in Israel, the top VCs, anyone I want really. And that's unthinkable to someone who a few months ago was like, and still is an unknown kind of like, who's this like weird American guy who just like loves Israel so much? In the US, if I did that in San Francisco, if I had no network and I showed up with my briefcase, like, hey guys, I'm here to set up some meetings, it would take me years, literally years, to get to the same where I am in just 2 months in Israel.
Yeah. Look, I'm an immigrant to Israel, right? I'm from Philly. And people say, how have you been able to manage to secure such great guests? I was like, everyone just knows everyone and everyone's here to help. And anyone will get coffee with you. Literally, I swear, if you just ask, it's unbelievable. It's really a shame Americans aren't like that more, even if you're in the same city and someone wants to meet or or entrepreneurial or wants to do good. That I don't know. I mean, Americans are extremely nice and kind, but there's something else there. And I think it's because everyone knows everyone, like almost literally. And I think it was related to everyone almost literally. That it does kind of change things. You mentioned a couple times earlier in our conversation about wearing a kippah. Offline, you told me you're not religious. What's up with that?
My wife tells me you're just trying to confuse the hell out of people. Because like
that's okay.
What are you?
Fun.
You know,
confusing people is entertaining.
Yeah. So no, I'm not Orthodox. I am religious. I consider myself conservative religious. I guess more majority would be the term, but yes, not Orthodox. But post October 7th, well, first, why did I do it? It was two-part. One, not only the shock of October 7th itself, but obviously the gut punch that the huge aftermath after October 7th, the world's response or lack of it, was a huge gut punch to me. And so part of it was like a big, pardon my language, a big FU to all the haters out there that want Jews to go and cower in the shadows and hide and hide our identities. I'm like, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to wear it proudly, in your face proudly. And the other part of it is I had dear friends that out of genuine fear, because it was a scary time, we all remember it, started taking off their yarmulke, because people who wore it their whole lives, they were Orthodox, that didn't feel safe wearing it anymore, that hid their Magen David pendants and took mezuzahs off the door. I don't judge them for it. I totally get it. It was a scary time. It was a scary time though. Like I remember standing outside the doors of my children's Hebrew school a few weeks after October 7th on one of the days of rage. And I literally had my hand in my pocket on a switchblade, standing outside for 2 hours, just like chilling there for no reason. That's not how I wanted to spend my time, but I had to, so my kids could learn the Shema in peace, which is so ironic. But that's how scared all of us were. Like I felt I needed to bring a switchblade to Hebrew school, and my friends who felt that, I get it. I totally get it. I don't judge them for that. But I said, you know what? I'm going to be a net addition of kippot to the world. And beautiful. Love it. I've never felt more at ease, more at peace, more whole as a human being. I'm still not Orthodox. I don't think I will be, but I love wearing a kippah. I love walking the streets, everywhere I go, proudly, including to some of the anti-Israel protests and the campus protests and all of that stuff. I've been to all that because I want to learn, like, what do people really believe? Like, what's on their minds? Why are they doing that? And I'll tell you one thing that I took away that's really broadly relevant to this audience and Jews globally. I travel a lot across the U.S., and not just in the coastal cities, New York and San Francisco, where a lot of VCs spend their time. I have family in the Midwest and across the U.S. And wherever I go now with my kippah, I'm like this magnet for anyone who has an opinion on Jews. They come to me unsolicited. I never ask people for feedback. I'm like, what do you,
Isn't that so interesting? I just want to interrupt you. I see this online a lot. People just put like anyone with the kippah, they just put like Ben Shapiro as a token Jew.
Yeah.
Instead of saying Jews would say, they would say like Ben Shapiro, which is like really funny, you know.
Well, I don't mind. I don't mind. I
don't. And I'm just saying it's a negative. It's just a funny. It's just an interesting.
I have noticed I have to be on behavior. I self-moderate. I am like my best self. I have to be on my best behavior when I'm wearing the kippah. It self-regulates me because I know that whatever I do, I'm like representing more than myself. So I'm like an extra good model citizen when I wear it. But people approach me in public parks, public restrooms, wherever I go randomly. They show up unsolicited, and the vast majority, well over 90% of the interactions I've had, and I've had probably close to 100 at this point, come up to me, regular Americans, not Jewish. Most of them are Christians, Catholic, whatever it is. They're like, hey, almost in like a hushed tone. Hey, I got to tell you, I think the world's crazy. I don't know what's going on, but like I read the papers, I see the TikTok, everyone's like hating on Israel. And I just want you to know, me and my family, we stand with Israel. You know, none of this is making sense to us. And one guy was like a black gentleman from Missouri who's a mechanic, walk up to me and he's like, you know, I caught my kids going to from the river to the sea rally, and I dragged them home by the collars. And I said, none of that nonsense here, but he didn't use the word nonsense. He used a different word. And he forced them to spend hours learning Middle Eastern history and the history of the conflict to like educate them. And he said, if I ever catch you going to a rally like that again, you're out of my house. And he meant it. And there's so many interactions of people like that have given me so much hope. You don't see it in the New York Times. You don't see it because you know how that algorithm is rigged against Israel. It's been well documented now. But the reality, when you spend time on the ground meeting regular, everyday people, the vast majority of them are either neutral, they don't care, or they're secretly pro-Israel. They stand with Israel. They even apologized to me for it. They're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you don't have to apologize. You didn't do anything. They're like, I'm so sorry for my country. I'm sorry for what's happening. They're like, that's the reality that you don't always get to hear about. And that's a really important message. If people don't take away anything else from this talk, please know that. Please know that so much of real America still very much stands with Israel.
Yeah, it's where more of America is less of real America. And it's not necessarily true of the younger generation because there's no education. Like that Missouri father that dragged his children to teach them. They went to school, public schools that intentionally lie, mislead, and smear. I went to a public school in Philly, 11th and 12th grade. It was terrible. When I was at Temple University, I think I might have said this before, I had a good friend who was Israeli who was studying there, an atheist Jew, and wore yarmulke because he wanted to feel and show his Jewish identity and pride. And he was atheist, wasn't even conservative, wasn't even traditional, let's say, like you were, which was, it was over 20 years ago. I mean, only what it would be like now, unreal. But it is fascinating, kind of that the dichotomy around it. Yeah, where can people find you and Alumni Ventures to stay up to date on your investments in Israel and in general?
Yes, well, if you just Google Alumni Ventures, Yevgeny Gelfand, you'll find me. You'll find my page. You can find me on LinkedIn. I check my LinkedIn. I try to keep up and respond as much as I can. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And if you wanted to email me directly, it's just yev@av.vc. I'm sure you'll include the link, but you can also feel free to email me directly. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for being on IsraelTech. I'll include everything about Yev and Alumni Ventures down in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your friends. Yev Gelfand, thank you so much for being on IsraelTech and everything you do for the tech ecosystem.
Right back at you. Thank you all for having me and love the community that you've built.